Much for joining us. I was just going to say we are recording and this will be on the IFAJ website. So thank you ever so much from wherever you are in the world. And I am Jane Craigie. I'm involved with the British Guild of Agricultural Journalists, and I'm on the executive board of the IFAJ representing Great Britain. The IFAJ is an amazing organisation, and we have learnt, those of us who've been involved for a long time have learnt so much about global agriculture, its challenges, our shared passions, and also our shared challenges. And conversations like this are really important for understanding each other and understanding the pressures of agriculture and producing food and managing land all over the world. I'm absolutely delighted today to have Caroline Drummond with us. As you'll hear, she's an exceptional leader with deep integrity. She's very honest, and she has been, I think what's lovely about Caroline is that she's been working for the organisation, which I'll ask her to tell you a little bit about, from a very early age. So her leadership journey has been through the growth of the organisation, which is called Linking Environment and Farming. It's a charity. Caroline has a very small team, and it always amazes me how productive the team is on such a limited budget. So if anybody's interested in running a charity and trying to achieve all that Leaf does, then Caroline's a great person to ask about that as well. I always think of Caroline as strong, resourceful, and she has deep integrity to what her organisation does. She lives and breathes what Leaf does, which is all around sustainability, caring for land, caring for people, and sustainability. So I'll hand over to Caroline to say a little bit more about what Leaf does, both in the UK, but also importantly, internationally.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jane, and great to be here. And so, yes, gosh, I have had a fantastic opportunity and a fantastic journey with the work that I do through Leaf. And yes, we are a small team, but I'll tell you a bit about the organisation and I guess a little bit about me as well. So I'm Jane and I were both at Sealhain, which is an agricultural college down in the southwest of England. I'm not originally from farming. My father was a deep sea diver, actually. And my journey into farming and agriculture has ever sort of been really from college right through to lecturing. And then for the last 30 years, being in charge and building up a charity, Leaf, linking environments and farming. And I guess where we come from in this organisation is it does, it builds on values that I personally hold very true to me, but also values that many of the farmers who not only started the work with us, but the growing number of farmers who've helped us bring the organisation to where it is today, and the positioning of where it is now, which is so appropriate against a backdrop of, climate change, biodiversity loss, right through to our relationship with food and health. So as an organisation, our drive has been very much always about delivering more sustainable agriculture, and we do that through integrated farm management. So if you can kind of visualise the Cirque du Soleil juggling farmer, farmers don't work on single issues. They look at soil, water, energy, biodiversity, organisation and planning, right through to trying to make a living against a huge backdrop of delivering good product and good food. And we've kind of moved our focus of how we really drive that integrated farm management approach and what it kind of aspires to now, which is agroecological, nature-based solutions, regen, conservation agriculture, whatever you really like to call it. But the reality is it's that framing of the triple bottom line that farmers are ultimately trying to achieve, good production and profitability, good environmental responsibility and social acceptance. And that's a big challenge in an increasingly urban society as well. So those sort of core things are really very much been our drivers. And we've done it through three ways. One is through knowledge generation and exchange. One is through the marketplace. and one has been through engagement and more recently education. And that's again been something that's been so critical in terms of really trying to drive that change, because when you start looking at the knowledge generation exchange, we have a network of demonstration farms. Farmers learn from other farmers, and that's something that's so key. So we work with some of the really best can-do farmers who are not saying, God, look, I've reached sustainability. These are the guys who say, we would like to adapt, experiment, and develop a little bit more. So that's been a really important driver. The marketplace now, 45% of UK fruit and veg will be Leafmark certified. So we have a global environmental sustainability label operating now across 21 countries. And as you say, Jane, we are a small organization, but we're probably over the next sort of 2 to 3 years, we'll be doubling in size as we really drive the ambition of Leafmark in particular, because the marketplace is such a big pull for really sort of encouraging farmers to be more sustainable, but actually also for consumers to kind of buy into sustainability as well. And so that kind of sustainability by stealth is a really key area. And then our final area of really where we've got to through education and engagement. So the education piece is we merged with another charity some 5 years ago. And that's really, education is about ensuring that information that is curriculum rich and is appropriate for teachers to bring agriculture into just about every lesson. When in fact, there's not one lesson that we can think of that you can't knit agriculture in. And we've been doing that through a range of ways. And it's just getting, I think, cuter and better in how we do it. And Jane and her team have been really involved in not only our education work, but also in the other core part of what we do, which is about public engagement. And we, as you know, you kind of, with any setting up of an organization, you kind of beg, borrow, steal. We steal ideas shamelessly, and we steal biscuits and pens probably off things. I'm sure that's about it, honestly. But in terms of what was really key, Open Farm Sunday was one of our farmers, Nuffield students, which was Ian Piggott, came back from Denmark and said, oh, why don't you try out their farming Sunday, which is what we did. And now pretty well every year, some 450 plus farms open up right across the UK, welcoming over 250,000 people out onto farm. And bearing in mind, farming touches every 5 senses that we have. The more of a sense that you can touch, the more you can embed a memory, the more you can embed an appreciation and a learning. So that for us has been something that's really, really key. So I guess what inspires me more than anything is, not only the fact that we've got a fab team, we work with wonderful people, but we have a network of a growing membership base of farmers and people in the industry who want to drive change and recognize the importance of proactive and positive approaches.
Thank you, Caroline. As always, that was very eloquent and beautifully explained. I'm going to ask you a question about the growth of Leaf and you growing with Leaf and driving the growth of Leaf over the years. And when I was planning this session, one of the things that struck me was back when you joined the organization in the early 1990s, what we talk about so readily now, so sustainability, net zero, emissions, biodiversity, they weren't terms. We didn't talk about those things, but you did, and you feel very passionately about it. Can you talk us through the growth of interest, the growth of Leaf, and the growth of you through that phase where we have become more mindful of these parts of farming?
Yeah, I mean, I think let's write that. And I think more than anything, it's pretty easy to kind of guess, read the tea leaves. When you look at all the challenges that we had through the 70s in particular, and that took us through the mid 80s. On a global scale, we were starting to see particularly biodiversity, reduce. We had driven up our capability to produce food. But because we'd introduced new technology, which was, it was a lifesaver for so many, but it hadn't been kind of matched as to what are the trade-offs, what are the challenges. And I think, that's why suddenly in the sort of the 80s, 90s, and, the Silent Spring from the 70s, etc., all of it became this kind of noisy challenge of, you want us to produce more food, and now you're saying we're damaging the environment. And so it's a confusing message. And I think what started to happen, and certainly when I started at Leaf, it was our incredibly visionary first chairman, which is a chap called David Richardson, who has written for years for the Farmers Weekly, and I'm sure many of you will know him, as well as some really visionary farmers. And I guess that's with anybody, when you're starting out your journey, find your friends who are kind of on the same path as you. And Ian Howie was, another great support and ambassador as well. I see you around the table here, Ian. And, it's kind of work with the positives, because I think the biggest challenge, and I suppose the growth for me as an individual is, yeah, I'm tough. Yes, I've got a lot stronger in lockdown because I've taken up CrossFit, but the reality is actually, you can be dragged down by the neg rats. And if you allow that to happen, then any aspiration or drive that you have is just going to be completely blown away. And I think, that's perhaps my strongest lesson, was that thing that you have to believe. And because I had sort of come through agriculture from being outside it, I spent my youth either kind of in or under or on the sea. It was when I started working in farming, and you kind of think, oh, so what do they do and how does that work? And you learn more and you appreciate more. And then to find all the wonderful things I did at Seal Hayne, and I loved Seal Hayne. It kind of made me as an individual. I was the first female president of the of Seal Hayne, and I used to sing in the band there. And it gave me personal confidence to then lecture and realize how much I probably hadn't learnt when I was at Seal Hayne, that I should have done, that I was now trying to share with teaching people. But the more I picked up and learnt the nuances of what I was lecturing in, which was soil and crops and cultivation and machinery and alternative and tropical produce, how actually that framing of good farming holds true always, and what nature delivers as core, whether it be healthy soil and all the biodiversity that goes on underground, right through to the breadth of the cross sort of landscape biodiversity, is something that's really key. And the two have to go together. And those values for me have been not only underpinning values of Leaf as an organization, and we worked right across Europe as well with our partners in Germany and France and Sweden and Luxembourg and Austria, but actually also, that those true values of this is right and we only need to expand on that.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and a very well curated answer as well. I was also just thinking as you were talking, so we are here broadcasting to a community of journalists and communicators, and a big part of your strength has been your ability to think about what you say, to articulate it well, and to communicate it via the many channels that we have, and growing channels that we have available. Just talk us through how you plan your communications and how powerful it has been and the media has been for you over the years.
So I guess when I found a letter the other day. So I started on the 1st of June, 1991 at Leaf. On the 9th of June, I went over to Germany with a bunch of journalists, actually. And so that was one, it was meeting the journalists. It was really important. And two, it was also learning. And I think that's always a really important thing for me, is kind of the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And it's using the skills of others. And, sometimes I do realize, my communications are certainly not as good, because, my husband will read one of my articles, and he's a farmer, he's a dairy farmer. He'll say, what are you saying? And I'll tell him what I'm saying. And he'll say, well, why haven't you written that? And, and it is that classic, the amount of time we go into meetings or we go into things or a talk, what are you saying? What's the point of me being here today, sort of thing. And that, I think, is something that actually a lot of people don't go prepared enough. I think it's that wonderful quote from Abraham Franklin, or Abraham Lincoln, I think, actually, sorry, which was, give me 6 hours to cut down a tree and I'll spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. And I think it's actually, it's the preparation that is so key. And, there is nothing that frustrates me more to be invited to a meeting where you've been sent the agenda, half an hour beforehand, and all the information that you're going to then be talking about is presented to you at the meeting, where actually, if you'd been allowed to have a longer time, had been sent the information that you're going to be talking, it's a much richer meeting. So I think preparation is something that's very key. And it's just what are you saying? What is the message?
And Caroline, what about journalists and the media? They have been very useful allies for you. How do you view the agri-food media, and how do you utilize that channel?
So, I mean, hugely valuable. We really respect the relationship and the long-term relationships we have with so many journalists. I think the bit that frustrates me is, I guess, which must be the frustration of the journalists themselves, is the pressure, particularly if you're within a publication, of not being allowed to do the thinking, because that's what I really value from talking with journalists: the good questions, the really kind of thought and prepared skills that, particularly, the agriculture journalists, you are specialists in agriculture, the nuances, you will have the history of what worked many years ago or what didn't work, or why is this going to suddenly land effectively now. And I think for us that's been a really important part. I think we continue to learn in this area, and I think that's a very big challenge in terms of how to get kind of airtime, because it's now not just sort of in the read media, it's on the television, it's on the radio, it's on the local radio, it's on the pod, etc., blog, Twitter. I think we've kind of always kept it clean, and I guess perhaps one of the challenges is we're not controversial, we're nicely in the middle road, which is sometimes not good enough for a BBC journalist as well. But it's we certainly value the importance of the truly skilled journalists, because when I read an article sometimes from somebody who's speculating about farming, you think, oh, that's so wrong.
The lovely thing is you take issue with that, which is great, and that's part of leadership, being confident to call people out when they don't report it well, or don't have the insight that they should and haven't taken the time. I completely agree with you. And while we're on communications, Caroline, one of the things that Leaf has done so well over the years is communicate to non-farming audiences. You touched on it in the introduction. And the other thing that you've done is trained farmers who are interested in communicating, giving them confidence to go out there and talk about the industry in a very accessible, a kind and an informative way. Can you just talk us through that role of communicating out with farming, and supporting farmers in doing that?
Yes, so that, I mean, it's always been a really key driver for Leaf, has been about communicating and reaching not only the farmer to farmer bit, but also obviously reaching out to consumers. And we started, it was as with any big change, it always comes after a crisis or a disaster. And after foot and mouth here in the UK, the countryside closed. And so a lot of the original activity that we did, which was going out on farm, just kind of fell to pieces. So what we did do was then develop this Speak Out program, and working with Susie Emmett, who is a BBC journalist, but also a fantastic communicator. We've, continued to develop that program, giving farmers confidence to say the right thing, to focus the message, because, all of us in farming get very passionate about agriculture and suddenly sort of saying, oh, you want to hear about the sort of agricultural policies, and actually, the more simple it is, the better it is. And so it was honing in the messages and being honest and being authentic and telling the stories. And so it's been a hugely it's been a fantastic program, actually, because it's given a lot of strength to many farmers who are just brilliant and passionate communicators.
Yeah, and you do such a great job in that, and it's the support that you give, not just those who are directly involved with you, but you give confidence to those who are interested, and you encourage them to join that journey, and in being a part of being industry communicators, which I love about you and the organization. I'm going to move on now to travel and the importance of travel in leadership, and you are a Nuffield scholar. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what you studied in your Nuffield, but also what you learned about yourself, about international agriculture and food, and also why travel is so important for leaders.
So the Nuffield Farming Scholarships are a brilliant opportunity for people to often focus in on a very, very particular project, and that's a real luxury, but at the same time, that's really special. And I had a predetermined topic, because there are sort of two levels. You're meant to be under 45, and I wasn't. So there's a different one for the more mature person, of which I was one, having failed earlier to be a Nuffield scholarship in my youth. And my topic was, what can farmers learn from science to improve the nutrition of our food? So for me, one of the things is, as farmers, we produce food, but often that's kind of commodity rather than actually the nutrition base. And we've just had launched yesterday here in the UK, the National Food Strategy. It's the first food strategy for 70 years. It's great that it brings out that interconnection between health and food and farming and environment. Needs to sort of go through a little bit more detail still, but that was pretty well my topic. And for me, I went out to Canada, which is just amazing. I wanted to see a bear, didn't see a bear. That was my disappointing bit. Sorry, that was probably not a word. But I went to France and the Netherlands and Germany, and where else did I go? I went to Taiwan. And perhaps for me, the biggest piece, and although I'd been through Asia before, was actually going to Taiwan. And so the real highlight areas were that appreciation of the food culture, the Chinese medicine, the kind of all those areas that are slightly in the kooky, unusual, kind of don't quite fit with our regular culture, but at the same time providing some real depth for actually where does food fit. And I think it was the fact that, down at the Asian Vegetable Center, where they're breeding, the epigenetics, the genetic aspects of driving change, unbelievable. And I think that was a big learning. The other place was at Guelph, the wonderful Guelph University in Canada, where actually there's some huge work going on in that depth of, this is what we produce, this is what we should be eating, and this is what we actually eat, that the lack of interconnection in these three areas. So I learned a lot. Travel was critical because it takes you to places that you kind of hadn't been before. It introduces you, particularly, I think the wealth is, what makes things happen are people. And travel gives that opportunity for meeting different people, different cultures, different views, some of them shared views, and really trying to kind of drive that change. So for me, it was those wonderful people, and not only the other fellow Nuffield scholars and the global Nuffield scholars, but actually the people that were prepared to share their passion. And the reason why I went to Taiwan, because I'd been told by somebody, if you want to see the best people in this space, these are the two guys. One was an Israeli and one was a Pakistani, and they both happened to be speaking at this conference. So that then, and I think, it's like with anything, you sow one seed and then it takes you to another place and it takes you to another place. And so it's allowing that journey to kind of drive. And I guess the other thing, I think the more it goes back to that thing, the more you understand, or the more you try and understand, the more you realize, goodness me, I just don't know anything at all.
But that keeps our sense of wonder, though, doesn't it? To find out more. I was just interested in your views on the importance of networks for leaders. It's a big part of leadership, who you can call on, who you can learn from, and how has that international travel supported you in what you're doing, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a critical area. I think it's like with anything, isn't it? We all like being in our own tribes. So I think of, my Silhanian tribe, and we're all on WhatsApp together, and we kind of, it all started off because we always do Burns night. And that's sort of kind of our big tribe. I think of the fact of when I go to what I see as my community, an agricultural show, it's all those familiar faces. You feel comfortable. You fast track the landing place, really, that you're starting from. And then, whether it be for Nuffield, you've got a common area, and that's your starting point. And I think that networks and the sort of familiarity networks are so key, because it picks up on the things that you value personally and hold dear to yourself, that you can then share and think, oh yes, brilliant, and that's where you learn from. And I was going to sort of say some of those they don't always work. So I'm very committed to encouraging women, as you know, Jane, into agriculture. And it was, Christine, myself and two others that sort of started off the Women in Food and Farming to kind of get connections, particularly for young people moving into agriculture. But I went to something recently, not here in the UK, it was an international thing. And actually, I didn't feel, it didn't spread, I didn't feel the connection. And sometimes you always think, oh, I should feel the connection, but the language had moved away from farming into another sector of food, which is vertical farming, and these new protein alternatives. And part of me is thinking, well, where does this going to fit with our interaction from farming? But, I wasn't ready to go into that space, or I felt very uncomfortable in that space because I felt threatened. And I guess you look for those networks that you are comfortable, and then you can move into another network when you start thinking, right, this is what I've got to offer. Or because sometimes those networks can be really closed and cliquey, and therefore you can't get into them and you can't sort of accept them, if that makes sense.
It does make complete sense. I can relate to everything that you're saying. I was going to ask you about your challenges. So, you're in a very fortuitous position that you've created, and also the world has sort of, the stars are aligning to Leaf and everything that you do and believe in, and as an organization. But that will create challenges for you, no doubt, especially being a small team. And, there's a lot of calls on your time, I know, Caroline. So what are your challenges, and how are you looking to take advantage of the opportunities within those challenges, but also deal with the things that are more difficult?
So the biggest challenge is obviously climate change. And I think, if we'd done our job really well, then there wouldn't be a need for Leaf, because, we'd be farming perfectly right across the globe, etc. But I guess, those are fundamentally real challenges. And I suppose for us as an organization, some of our biggest challenges are around competition, greenwash. And I think, for us, building up the integrity and the legacy is something that's really, really critical. And I've just been in a meeting a few minutes ago, and, I sort of did highlight the concern that I had around, it's kind of what's the shiny new thing that we can play with, rather than necessarily actually let's expand and build. Because in reality, if you look at things like the Sustainable Development Goals, we've got 9 years now actually to deliver against those, and we're not doing a very good job at the moment. So therefore, trying to accelerate and scale up and really build meaningful change across what farming can represent in this area is absolutely key. And so therefore, we've got to, not sort of let's go back down to the bottom again. Let's go to the platform that's higher. Let's build and let's develop. So I think integrity is something that's very key. And I am confident and actually really pleased by those people that we work with, that they value those same, green credentials and the legacy as well. But that said, I certainly do see quite a lot of kind of greenwash coming through, and I think we need to be very cautious of that. I guess the other thing is that challenge of government, because here across the UK, of course, we've got changes across Europe. There's a new sort of era of the Common Agriculture Policy on the farm to fork piece. So all of that creates a challenge of change, and then just as farmers kind of feel that they've kind of adapted and developed their systems to address that, is it enough? And it's hard work farming. And so it's building around that's something that's that's really critical. So I think those are big things. I think, people respect values, and I think integrity kind of, maybe I'm just old fashioned, but I do think integrity and values come through to the end, because what just amazes me is, it's all those people you've met over the years, right from the very beginning of the organization, right through to those young people who were, agricultural students that you might have helped out for a dissertation or something like that, to, new PhD students that are coming through now. And I think it's that values and integrity and engaging is critical.
Yeah, very, very true. And I'm going to ask you one question before we, I'll ask Hugh to put us on gallery view and ask anybody if they want to ask questions of you. But I was just wondering if you could put you on the spot here. What would you say your leadership style is? And what are your 3 most important or valuable attributes as a leader, do you think?
I suppose my leadership style is conviction, and this is it, it's logic, I suppose, and belief, in terms of sticking behind things. So we've just done our new 10-year strategy for Leaf, and a key part of that, of course, has been, this is where we should be driving. And if you go back 30 years, as you said, Jane, earlier, for a lot of farmers, that was an incredibly uncomfortable space. I had a lot of kind of chest beating from farmers saying, oh, don't mention the environment, because we'll then have to do something about it, to, working on it, building it up, and, people being actually so proud of the biodiversity that they're delivering against, alongside, that quality production of food. And when you look through what we have as an industry, as a farming industry delivered, it just, it is more and more and better and better. And that's a fantastic example. And Leaf's done its little bit for that. So I guess the leadership style has been doggedness and, like a little Jack Russell, really. This is the route that we're taking. And, this is the journey that we're going to stick with. And whilst we may have adopted different approaches to make the journey right, we haven't moved from, you know, we're not Johnny come lately on the old sort of sustainability front. That's been a fundamental value and a core value. And I think, yeah, in terms of I suppose the 3 attributes that help along the way is working with and having those mentors and the go-to people that you can kind of test things out on. You know, David Richardson was our first chairman. You know, I'll be in touch with David every 3 weeks or so, just, you know, just to check in with him. But also, you know, he loves Leaf, and, you know, obviously I love him as well. So, you know, that's that whole that's something, and finding those mentors and the people that are going to help you through some of those challenges when the going gets tough, or when you start questioning things. That's really key. And that, you know, that's true of some of the people within our team, right through to people and the farmers that we work with. Trust. You know, I fundamentally trust most people until they suddenly do something that completely breaks that trust. And, you know, I think that's, you have to believe. And, you know, sad are the people that don't have the sort of the values to believe. And I think it is a future challenge for a lot of, particularly over, you know, lockdown. I think, you know, the isolation does kind of take people away from some of that realistic focus of life, I guess. And then, yeah, just kind of sticking to it. You know, I am I'm a leaf bore, but hey, you know, I love it. And I hope some of the enthusiasm that I have about it, but also all the farmers that we work with, you know, we work with can-do people. The neg rats just kind of don't add value to things, but, you know, and that's not to say we don't have challenges. And, you know, we have some really hearty challenges from very positive people, because they're looking for a solution rather than, it can't be done with no solution. So coming up with, you know, working with the can-do who want to try and work out the solution is critical. Sorry, probably far too many things.
No, that's and I would say the 2 things that I think sum you up, knowing you well, are your deep integrity and your dogged determination. You don't let go, and I think that's they're amazing qualities. But you do it always in a very fair, kind way. You know, we can all learn from that approach. Hugh, would you mind putting us on gallery view? And I know that there will be some questions, and probably the first person will be Tom, I would think.
Yeah, if I'm okay to go first, Jane. Hello, Caroline. I've been along the journey with you in various guises and so on. I've very much enjoyed that journey. My question would be towards Leafmark, and like so much in Leafmark as a brand, as a logo, if you like, punches well above its weight. You know, if you consider the resources that have gone into Red Tractor, for example, and where it sits next to Leafmark, and what you've achieved, or what your team has achieved, should I say, with Leafmark, then, you know, it's quite interesting, the difference, I would suggest. What my question is, you know, what points along the way, what were the sort of critical points along the way with Leafmark that has made it what it is today? What are the sort of critical things that you did, and how much do you think was that down to you, and how much was just happy coincidence? And then the second part of it is, what's the future for Leafmark? I mean, you know, this whole, as we've already talked about, this whole sustainability thing is very much of the moment. You know, how can Leafmark capture that and really, you know, sort of mature, you know, achieve what it could achieve, if that's not an insulting thing to say, in terms of capturing that current interest in sustainability?
No,
Caroline,
thank you.
before you, just to add to that, for our international colleagues, I wondered if you could say a little bit more about Leafmark and which countries you're operating it in.
Golly, yes, there's 21 countries, so I'm not going to be able to lift.
No, don't worry.
So Leafmark is a sustainability assurance scheme. It's independently externally verified. We are ICL accredited, which means that it sits there with the Marine Stewardship, Forestry Stewardship Council, Rainforest Alliance. It is, we have in the UK 5 different independently externally verified standards, not environmental standards. We have Red Tractor, which is a core food safety one. We have, it's a bit like Global Gap. We have 2 organic standards, Soil Association Organic Farmers and Growers, and we have RSPCA Assured, which is associated with animal welfare. And then Leafmark, which is obviously environmental sustainability. We are the only ICL accredited organization. So that's something, you know, for us, that's again really critical, because what it's done is drive the authenticity and the governance behind what we do. We operate, as I said, 45% of UK fruit and veg is Leafmark certified. It is on the shelf in one of our supermarkets, which is Waitrose, who actually sell about 6% of the fresh produce of the retail sector. But that said, as you will probably all appreciate, most veg producers will sell into several other retailers as well. And we operate internationally. Now, just sort of to kind of combine the point of the overseas and Tom's piece. So in about 1998, we started the journey of Leafmark. It came about because a lot of people were going around our demonstration farmers and saying, we'd like to buy produce like this. And so we kind of moved forward. It was the time we'd been very involved with the development of Red Tractor at that same sort of space. And the major supermarkets said, we're going to get behind an environmental standard. So that was Waitrose, Tesco, sorry, these are English supermarkets, but Sainsbury's, Gateway, Summerfield. And what happened in about 1999, supermarkets work on a bit of a mixy cycle, which is a disease in rabbits. 1 minute they're good and the next minute they're bad. And there was complete freefall around the late 90s. And what happened was actually Waitrose said, we're going to stick with this. It sticks with our values. And I think, yes, I was part of, I mean, obviously quite a key part of those discussions, but so were the people that we were working with, the farmers, our board at the time, and our relationships, our very long-term relationships with retailers. So we have always, since 1991, we have always had retailers around our table. And quite frankly, the retailers have always sort of said, oh, you know, tell us as an industry what you do, because back in 91, that, you know, at the end of the day, they're just shops, really. So, you know, they have developed into a completely different place now. In terms of the whole food chain perspective. So we saw a huge amount of change, and relationships were a very important part of that. Where it is driven now, I mean, it has been the wisdom and the capability and the sheer brains of some of our team in this particular space. So I'm sure many of you might know Catherine Green. She's just had another baby 2 days ago, so congratulations to her. But you know, Catherine was she's Mrs. Brain, and we now have Jenny leading the Leafmark team, and she's just another Mrs. Big Brain, and her team are just wonderful. And you know, they have really great skills in terms of the standard setting process. And I think this is why ICL is so important for us. It's set an even higher goal for us to ensure the authenticity of the standard is robust. We've been impact reporting for the last 9 years. We're the only farm assurance scheme here for food that reports against their impact. None of the others do at all. And I think, you know, we're really, really proud of that. I think in terms of the future of Leafmark, it's looking pretty rosy, Tom. It's looking rosy for a lot of reasons. So all of Waitrose's fresh produce is Leafmark certified UK. It was, they set a target in 2009 for it also to, sorry, 2006 for it to be on all their global produce as well. But what happened in 2008, I'm sure everyone remember, we had a global food shortages. And so that then meant that actually it was really tricky for UK retailers to make claims for overseas farmers, because they would just say, it's all right, we're not going to sell to you. And that created a different perspective. But that said, you know, we're now on a trajectory which is going to be growing international. I would think over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. I wish there was more I could say to you, Tom. I will say to you more in a few weeks' time, but it's looking rosy and it's looking very positive on a global basis. Marks and Spencer's, it's a Plan A attribute for Leafmark on all their produce, and we're working on them in a different way as well. We're working with Jordan's, Vitacress. We're working with quite a lot of increasing number of processors where they're farmer groups, and Leafmark is a nice kind of a sort of sounding board for them to demonstrate their sustainability credentials. And so, yes, I think the future of Leafmark is not just in the fresh produce sector. It will also start moving in. Oh, I mean, we have the whole of Jersey is a Leafmark island. So how could I forget that? So, you know, we have Jersey cows, Jersey potatoes. And so again, it has opportunity on the new government schemes under the ELMS and the Sustainable Farming Initiative in England. And we're working with Scotland as well in that area of earned recognition. And it has a real pull in the marketplace.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Caroline. I remember once I was traveling about 3 years ago in New Zealand, and we went to see a big vegetable and potato producer on the North Island, and they were proudly saying that they were Leafmark assured. And we asked, you know, why is it important to you as a New Zealand business? And they said, because it gives us access to one of the best markets in the world and most lucrative markets in the world. So for them, it was about market access, and they needed it to be able to supply high-end retail. And they said that it had also opened doors even where Leafmark wasn't used in a country. The credentials were so high that it gave them access to other markets. So they used it as a passport for access.
Mm. And we've seen this where farmers have used it for trying to rent new land area, because it's a you know, it's kind of like, this is my credentials, these are my values. So yeah, no, it's been good. It is good.
Thank you, Caroline. We've got about just over 5 minutes left. Has anybody got any further questions?
Yeah, I'll ask one.
Far away.
What about funding? These are always issues with these type of programs, at least the sustainability over the long term. So how are you going to sustain this type of program? Because with the consumers, for example, it's a long game. It's not something you can have a publicity campaign for 3 months and expect that that's going to change the world. Mm. So what's the future prospects for Leaf?
So, I mean, I think you hit on a topic that's so critical, which is the continuity piece. So, you know, we see, for example, people introducing new demonstration farms and stuff like that, and to keep the legacy of demonstration farms alive, you know, requires funding, it requires drive, it requires, you know, injection of energy. So from a funding perspective, as an organization of Leaf, I'll do you several levels here. For Leaf, that's, you know, our funding comes from 3 principal sources. One is membership from farmers and corporate companies. One is trusts and grants, and we're very involved in quite a lot of research projects. We're the sort of one of the principal KE ones for quite a few Horizon 2020 projects. And then one is sponsorship. And so we kind of do that focus of trying to make sure that you don't always have your funding streams in the same basket, which is something that's really, really key. From a point of view of farmers, we've kind of increasingly looked at, what are the values, what are the opportunities for farmers. So the efficiency of an integrated farm management approach brings the best of modern technology and the best of traditional. And that brings with it not only better management skills, but it also brings in cost savings, cost efficiencies, reducing pesticides, fertilizer usage, etc. So there's some really strong efficiencies in that space. There are 23% of our farmers get premiums. We don't negotiate a premium. We can just offer the opportunity. And I think, I'm sure many of you around the table, and I'm sure Jane will agree as well, but often we kind of try and skimp when it comes to communication, investing in communication and marketing. And farmers are world-class in this area. They kind of think, yeah, well, people will want to buy our food because they've got to eat. But the reality is actually we do need to invest in that area. So that, that's part of the fact that we have so many wonderful farmers taking part in Open Farm Sunday. It's part of the fact that, farmers do see that Leafmark is a good investment for their product. And that may be because they want to rent more land. It may be because they want to get into new markets. It wants to be an existing market or the market requirement and push. So I think one of our farmers was talking about this specifically the other day. He reckons he's got four income streams. The one, selling the product and the authenticity that goes with it. So that's about the efficiency, and it's about, that better market preferred supplier. One is through government schemes. And although we kind of say, not everybody's got government schemes, different countries have different government schemes. It may be tax, it may be incentives, it may be free advice, it may be all sorts of areas. And so, that's another core aspect. The third area will be the new streams around, and Tom's on here now, but, about carbon trading, biodiversity offsetting, and that, it needs to come back onto farm. So farmers are rewarded for where they are building up the capacity and capability of habitats, landscapes, as well as obviously soil health and woodland and trees. And then the fourth area is the potential of, I think we've seen it starting to be touched through COVID, that health and well-being, mental health and well-being piece. It's the tourism area. We've done as an organisation a lot of work in this through a wonderful project called Let Nature Feed Your Senses. And, without a doubt, because, as I said earlier, we touch 5 senses, our capability to support people through personalized prescriptions, personalized diets is going to be something that's, really something of the future. I mean, it was something I touched on within my Nuffield, and, personalized prescription of health and diet is certainly growing. And we're starting to do some work with young doctors now, which is just whiz, because, we need doctors to be giving advice for healthy food, not drugs. And so all of these opportunities are definitely there in the future.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any other questions from anybody? Ricarda.
My question is, how do you convince critical farmers who are maybe afraid of topics like biodiversity and very natural farming, stuff like that, because we all know that the structural change in farming is massive, and a lot of farmers are afraid. They stick to the system. How do you convince critical farmers?
So the great thing, we operate on the whole farm integrated farm management approach, and it really does. I don't know if you can you kind of see what it looks like there, but I know Sam's put up our website, but it sort of touches on organization and planning, soil management, crop health, pollution, animal husbandry, energy, water, landscape, and engaging society. And I could probably argue that you can touch any farmer in one of those areas or any one of those areas somewhere along the line. And whilst they may be sort of cynical about the biodiversity bit, that's not my patch. They may think, oh, you know, soil, that's my, or animal husbandry. And so it's really capturing the individual farmer enthusiasm in that space. That's something that's so important. And I think it's then working through, and, you know, actually I would wager that when it comes to biodiversity, there's probably not one farmer out there across the globe who doesn't have a special place on their farm, because it may be noisier, or it may be quieter, or it may be where the cows do best, or because there's a, you know, there's something, or there's a lovely tree or something that they truly value on their farm. And so it's going into the inroad rather. That said, yeah, there will be always those farmers that just are not going to engage. And I think, yeah, I mean, sooner or later, those are the farmers that will step down. They're not enjoying life if that's the area, or if they are, then they're probably delivering something that we haven't accounted for in farming. And, you know, I know, you know, I'm married to a dairy farmer. We have 130 cows, but there will be about, you know, Phil will pay 64 businesses who will service our farm. And, you know, if you take out a dairy farm from this landscape, and there used to be 7 dairy farms across this landscape, and there are only now, we can only see one because there's just us and another dairy farm over there. And there's some pretty rough land over there because they're not doing anything to it at the moment. But if you take out a dairy farm, then you actually start eroding that really valuable skill base in rural communities. The person who does the tires, the person who, you know, brings the liquid nitrogen for the AI, or right through to the vacuum pump or the tractor repairer, etc. And I think this is a real challenge going forwards. You know, here in the UK, we're 88% urban, and that's, you know, some of the conversations that I've been on recently is going back to that sort of space of controlled environment and shipping container food. You know, it's lost touch with the interconnections that we have with nature, which is such a fundamental part of farming.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Just to let you all know, Sam, who's also on this call, one of Caroline's colleagues, has put Caroline's contact details and links to the website, and also to the IFM wheel that Caroline showed just now. So I'm sure, Caroline, you'd be delighted to hear from anybody who wants to follow up with you.
Please, yes.
Well, we are just 1 minute past the hour, so I know, Caroline, you've got a very busy schedule as always, so I'd just like to thank you for being so open and honest about everything in your world and your leadership journey. I always love hearing you, and always learn something more about your life every time I listen to you. So thank you very much. And I think you know, just the lovely thing about good leaders that really do blossom through their careers is that everything they do is driven from their values and their beliefs. And I think that's probably the most important thing to remember on your own leadership journeys. Just be true to yourself. You know, what is true to you will drive you forward through your career. So thank you, Caroline, for sharing your journey.
Thank you so much, Jane. As always, lovely to meet you and great to see everyone else.
And just to let you all know that this will be going up on the IFAJ website, and also keep an eye on your emails, because we've got the e-Congress week coming up in August. Is it the 23rd that starts, Hugh? Yes, 23rd, that week in August. So for those of you who don't engage as routinely with IFAJ, it's a really good opportunity to meet some more people, albeit virtually. And then in 2022, we will all be heading to Denmark for the 2022 Congress. So please come along. And thank you ever so much. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.